Hello and welcome to a video introducing the Mapipedia.com web platform. In this video I'll be showing you how to put some data into the platform to generate animated heat maps, as well as entering some events to explain why the data is changing the way it is. On the screen at the moment we have two browsers that are open. One is open to the Mapipedia.com homepage. The other one is open to the Map Your Own Data page, which you can get to from any page on the platform by going down to the footer and clicking on this Map Your Own Data link. So the reason why I have both of these open is because I'll be following through these instructions on the right hand side, on the left hand side, so you can see the output of these instructions. So this Map Your Own Data page is basically a step-by-step approach to mapping your own data. It's designed for people who just want to get something up and running quickly without necessarily going into a detailed description of every feature. Sample data is also included in this tutorial, so you can get a page up and running pretty quickly. Alternatively, if you are looking for more detailed information on a particular feature that might not be covered on this page, you can click on the main help page. So there's a link here. There's also links, in the footer, links as well. So I'll give you a quick introduction. I'll explain how to change stuff in the what section of the page, and then show you how to actually input some CSV data, and then there'll be a couple of examples there that they're quite different examples, which is why they've both been included. And I'll also show you how to enter some events in the Y section, do some basic error checking, and then save your data to the server. You can actually edit someone else's page, but you can't save changes to someone else's page under their account. You can only save changes to a copy of that page under your account. So for example, if you open someone else's page, make a bunch of changes to it, when you save it, you'll actually save your own copy. You'll not be overwriting the original. So if you do copy someone else's page, we just ask that you keep it private so that it keeps the amount of duplication to a minimum. You can actually perform all the steps that we're about to go through without having an account, but you won't be able to save the changes to the server without having an account, but you can set up an account for free. The CSV data that we'll be introducing, there's basically two broad formats. There's a column-based format and a row-based format, and each of the two examples will go through one of those different formats. So the first example will go through the column-based format, the second one will go through the row-based format. And when we look at the CSV data, we can see that once you have data in that format, the actual numbers in those files can represent anything that you want them to represent. They can represent average life expectancy, or percentage of English speakers, or number of UFO sightings. They can even be dates as well. So we can go through that in a bit more detail a bit later on when we look at some examples. So if we actually go to a page, so in this case I'm clicking on the average life expectancy, we'll see that there are some sections. There's a what section, which describes what the page is about. There's the when section, which has the time period, the where, which has the map, and the how, which shows you how the data is changing over time. And there's the why, which has got some events, which describes why the data is changing the way it is. So when we talk about the what section here, we're really talking about this part at the top. So if you click on the edit page, you'll see all these green buttons appearing. So these green buttons refer to editing particular parts or sections of that page, as well as clearing the page and checking for errors, and also saving to the server. So if we start by clearing the page, then we can start from a fairly blank slate. You'll notice that this Save to Server button has gone red, which means that there's been changes made to it. So if we look at this description section, and if we decide that we're going to change this what section of the page, we can see some of the options that we have available. So there's the heading. You can see at the moment it's got the new page heading, which matches up the top here. If we change that, here is a new heading, and then we can see that's modified the top here. The sources, so often it's a good idea to reference sources in your page, so that if people want to find out more detail about where the data has come from and check the legitimacy of the information on the page, then they can do that. So if we, I don't know, let's just put in any link for now, and you can have more than one. So you can click OK, and you can see that these now appear in the sources section of the page. You can also add some search words as well. So if you've already, if you've got words that people might search, they might use when they're trying to find your page, and those words are not already in your page, then you can add them here. So here are some additional words. But if they are already in your page, then you don't need to do that. You don't need to add them in that section. That's really only for words that don't already exist. And then the main description, which is this section over here, is also edited in this what section. So if we come along here, we can say here is a cool page, and we can add an image. So you can add an image by choosing from a file. You can also, if you've already got the image in the clipboard, you can paste it straight in here. So let's just grab a sample image from the web. Let's look for dogs. And so if you right click on this image and just go copy image, you can just paste that in here. And it's a good idea to have an image description, because that means that screen readers will have something to read out if there are people who are using those tools. It also means that SEO will be able to find that image through a text search. So it's actually also appears as a label in the actual description, the main description itself. So here is a dog. Oops, not a god. And you can also add more information here, and you can add a different image as well. So let's just say we really like this dog. We put that in here, and then you can click OK. So now we've got the text that we've put along here. But here is a new heading, matches the title page, and we've got our sources. So that's the description, or the what section, covered. So now let's actually put in some data. So this first example is going to make use of column-based CSV data. The second example will use row-based. We're going to do an animated heat map at the world map level, at the country level. The second example is going to be at the state level within a country. We're going to be specifying time steps at the year level. We're going to be using data that represents the population and how that changes over time by each region or each country. And we'll also add a total line showing how the actual total population changes over time, because the data itself is only going to be describing the population for each country, but we'll be able to add those up and get the total population over time. We can also change some colors on the map. Because the population numbers themselves change quite a lot from country to country, we can lose a lot of the detail from some of the smaller countries. So switching to from a linear to a log scale can help see some of that detail. And we'll also set an initial page date. So first of all, let's download some population data. So if we click on this and open it up in Excel, this is an example of column-based data. So we can see dates across the top. We can see that they're actually 10 years apart there, and then later on they're 1 year apart. So they don't have to be evenly spaced, and we've got all these different countries along the side here, and we've got all these population numbers which represent the population for that country in that year. And as I said earlier, these numbers can actually represent anything you want them to represent, but in this case they're populations. So we've got our data, and so the next step is we're in edit mode because we've clicked this button. We've cleared the page, which is effectively the same as this blank page step here. So the next step is we want to choose a map. So if we click on the map, we've actually got maps of lots of different countries here. So if we were to click on Belgium, we'll see that Belgium appears down here with all its different states, or its equivalents of states. So we want to choose the world map, which is going to bring that up down here. In the where section. So we can either choose it from this drop down list, or if you've got your own map data, you can choose it from a file if it's in TopoJSON or GeoJSON format, or you can actually paste the data in here as well. So we've got our map data in here. We can zoom in on that. We can move it around like typical map stuff. And now we want to actually put our CSV data into here. So if we go to the How section and click on the CSV data, we can select this data from, so that was Control A to select all the data, and then Control C to put it in the clipboard if you're working in Windows, and then paste it in here. And now we can see that we've got some lines in the graph down here. These are, and we've got some colors in the map up here. So if we look, we can see that actually goes up to a little over 1.3 billion, which is the population of China as of 2015. We can see that the times have gone, the date range has gone from 1800 to 2015. Similarly down here as well. If we, I'll just close that a little bit so we can see a bit more information on the page. If I hover over China, you can see that the top line has been selected. If I hover over India, the second top line, and as I hover over different countries, so the USA is the third one there, Brazil, you can see that blue line, but as you can see, there's lots and lots of countries down here with really small numbers, which are harder to see, which is why we're going to switch it to a log scale a bit later on. So right now we can say, okay, well that's pretty cool. We can see all these different countries. What's the total population? How's that been changing? So here we can do that by selecting this graph drop-down option, and we can say that we want to sum up the values. And so what that basically is doing is just adding up all these lines and getting a total. So we can see that the total global population was a little over 7.3 billion. As of 2015, and if you kind of look at these numbers, you can see that it's kind of doubled since about 1970. Now you can also change the colors on this map. So if we click on the regions, and we can remove some colors, and if we can add some colors, and when it adds colors, it kind of just adds them randomly, and then you can edit them. So we can say, oh, okay, we don't want that color. Let's choose that one instead. Oh, that's all a bit bland. They're all the same, aren't they? Let's choose something else. Let's put a bit of red in there. And then when you animate this over time, you can see those colors starting to change. Some of the smaller numbers are really hard to see because they're dominated by the larger numbers. We can select a log scale, and that will make this animation a lot more interesting, especially if we add a few more colors and put a bit more variety in there. Whereas before, not many of the countries were changing color. And also we can actually see that there's a lot more lines in here, because these numbers up here now are going up by an order of magnitude each time. So when you hover over the region, you can see the line being selected in the graph, and when you hover over the graph, you can see the region being selected in the map. And you can also select an initial display date. So if for some reason, if you leave this blank, then it will default to displaying the very first time step in the map, but you might want it to say open up at 1950 for some reason. So here you can say you can put that in there, and that will just mean that when you save the page, when someone else goes to open that page, it will open up in the year 1950. And that's the first example done. So now let's go through the next example. So this one's going to be looking at the formation of the USA over time, and we're going to be looking at Rowbased data, and this time it's going to be an animated heat map on a USA map at the state level rather than a world map at the country level. We're going to use dates inside the data instead of like numbers, like population numbers. They're going to actually be dates, and those are going to be the dates that the states joined the Union. And they're also going to have days, months, and years associated with them. The duration between these dates is not going to be consistent, and that's okay. And we'll also do a bit of a manipulation on the graph so that we can actually see the number of states that have joined the Union over time. And we'll actually create a region group as well, because while the USA was forming, there was a time when West Virginia and Virginia were combined, and then they got split during the Civil War. So similarly to last time, let's clear this page. Let's work through these steps. So let's download this row-based data now. So you can see this is quite different to the column-based data. So now we don't have a column for every date time step. We've actually got the dates defined in one column, and here we're defining the start and sometimes the end date that a region is valid for. So that combined, where Virginia is combined, so Virginia joined the Union in 1788, but then Virginia got split into, so Virginia combined got split into West Virginia and Virginia in 1863. So we're stopping the combined region there, and we're starting the new regions in 1863 here. That's really the only sort of complicated bit here. The rest is just specifying the state and the year that it joined, and the values here are also the dates, because we're going to color code based on the actual dates themselves. So we're in edit mode. So now let's select the map. So we want to select the USA. Nope, not that projection. Let's select the Rowbased projection. That looks a bit nicer. And we want to upload the CSV data. So Control A, put that in the clipboard, Control C, and now let's paste the CSV data into here. Now we get this error because it's saying that this date format of 6/20/1863 does not match the selected date format of Y, which is the year. So what we need to do is we need to change the date format. So we can see that this data hasn't been imported. There aren't any colors or anything up here. So if we choose the right date format, which in this case is month, day, year, then we can start seeing that now we've got, you know, Delaware in here, and we've got a bunch of lines in here. If we now sort of start to animate that, we can see all the different sort of times when the states joined the Union. The scale has got the dates here from 1788 to 1960, but we don't really want the graph to look like this. Each one of these lines in the graph represents a state. So the state joins the Union and stays in the Union, with the exception of the Virginia combined one. But we'd really like to see a graph of how the number of states has changed over time. So if we go to this graph option here and select the count option, it's a bit like an Excel sort of count option. It's really just counting the number of lines that exist over time. So when it does that, we can see this profile. So we can see there's a number of states that joined fairly quickly early on, and it sort of plateaued, then a few more states joined, and then it built up to 48. It was on 48 for quite a while before Alaska and Hawaii joined around 1960. And so now let's look at the West Virginia option. So what we want to be doing now is we've got, if we sort of scroll along here, if we look at this map, we'll see that right now we don't have anything in this area up until 1863, and then a little bit after that, Virginia and West Virginia have been coloured. And the reason for that is because before that, from 1788 to about that point, the combined Virginia was in there. So in our CSV data, we've got Virginia combined, but we don't have anything on the map that represents Virginia combined. So we need to create that region group to allow it to make that association. So if we go here, and the best way to do that is to copy an example. So if we paste this into Excel, let's create a new tab, paste this in here, let's delete this data. So these are the column headers that we need at the top. So our region group is Virginia combined, and that's going to start on the 25th of June 1788, and it's going to end on the 20th of June 1863. They don't always have to have an end, but in this case we do need to have an end because West Virginia and Virginia split at that point. The groups that form that region group are West Virginia and Virginia. So these are the regions in the map that need to be combined to form the region group of Virginia combined. Then we can paste this data back into the page. And now let's see if we've got some data in there. Okay, so now we can see that that has turned red after 1788, and they're combined, and then over time that splits into Virginia and West Virginia. So that's how we make a region group. One of the good examples of a region group is actually currency exchange data set that I've put together, where a lot of the European countries are grouped together in a region group for the euro. But that's another example of how you can actually put some data in there and display it in a different format. Then there's the why. So you might want to explain why some of the interesting features in the data by adding some events. First of all, we need to click on the events button and then click on the edit events. And then if we click on add event, we can put in something, so we can say Alaska joined the Union. Alaska joined on the 3rd of January 1959. So let's put that in here. We need to make sure the date format's correct. So it's going to be month, day, year. We don't have to put an end date on there. And we can specify it with a group if we need to, but for now let's not worry about that. And the actual location is Alaska. We can put a source in here if we want to. So again, it could be www.wikipedia.org, and this is when Alaska joined the Union. And we might want to add an image, so let's go to Google and let's find an image of Alaska. Copy image, paste this in here, and click OK. So what we have down here now is this little bar down the bottom. So let's just change the date in this case, just so we can see something a bit longer, because this was put in right at the end. So let's just say that Alaska joined in 1859, so that we have something that's easier to see. So now we can see a much bigger bar here. So when I hover over that bar, you can see that Alaska gets highlighted, and when I hover over Alaska, you can see that bar gets highlighted, and you can also see the image and the text appearing on the right over here. So when the animation actually plays, when it hits, so we're about to hit the bar down the bottom. When it reaches that bar, it'll select that bar and show it over on the top. So that's how you can add some events, and you can add lots of events like that following that same sort of principle. Now, something else that's also useful to do is to check for errors. So if we check for errors now, we can see that there's zeros in all of these, which is pretty good. But let's intentionally put in an error so that we can see what it looks like. And let's just say that we had a typo in West Virginia, and we had West Virginia 2 there, and we pasted that into our CSV data over here. And now if we hover along here, if we move the slider across, we'll see that there's nothing in West Virginia, and that's because West Virginia no longer exists in the CSV data. It's West Virginia 2. And so if we check for errors, this will come along and say, okay, well, it found some CSV data that doesn't match a region in the map. And also down here, it's got a region in the map that doesn't actually map anything in the CSV. So the CSV is the stats labels, doesn't actually match anything in the CSV data. Now, these don't necessarily mean that they are errors. So if you've got a map of the world and you don't have CSV data representing every country in the world, then you'll get lots of entries down here. And that's not necessarily because there's errors, it just means you don't have any data for them. And similarly, if you had, say, a map of the world that didn't have every country represented, it might have left off a lot of the small island nations, for example, but you actually had CSV data for all of that, then you'd see more entries up here, and again, they wouldn't necessarily be errors. So really this page is just a bit of a guide, so that if things don't seem to be working as expected, you can look at this and it might give you some clues. So the labels in the CSV data have to match the labels on the map exactly, otherwise it can't link them together. If we get rid of that 2 and paste that into the page, then that should all go back to the way it was before. And let's just check. So now we've got data in here for West Virginia, and if we check for errors again, we can see that that's back to 0. And now if we go back over here, and then if we want to save it to the server, we can click on save, and we can say, okay, here is a new page for the USA featuring Alaska, and we want to create a new page. Select a custom name if we want to. So here is USA with Alaska. We might want to keep the page private if we don't want anyone else to be able to find it. So if it's private, you can give people links and they can view it, but they won't be able to search for it within the Mapipedia platform itself. So if it's a duplicate page, keep it non-public, so you can keep it private or creator or custom. Creator just means that only the creator can view it when they're logged in, and custom means that you can select specific users that can view the page and only when they're logged in. Let's make it public for now. You can put in a description of the changes. You can put in some meta description data, which is also useful for SEO optimization. If you do make changes to a page and you want to notify followers, you can do that. And when you do notify followers, it will basically email them what you put in this description of changes section. And then if you do have public selected up here, you just need to confirm that it is an original page rather than it being a copy of someone else's page. And you can click save, and that should come back fairly quickly. And now here's the link that should now work. And in fact, I can just click on it here. And so now there's a new page with the Alaska picture here, and it's all working fine. But thank you for watching the video, and if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Cheers. Bye.